All right. Well, hey, everybody, we are live. My name is Tommy Nichols, founder of the Charlotte Black Film Festival, and just got finished watching a very insightful documentary called Girl Dads. Uh, we're celebrating Father's Day, and the Charlotte Black Film Festival just screened Girl Dads. How awesome is that? And so, before we really get going, I want to go around to the filmmaker Jay Wiggins, and he's going to introduce the men that was part of this documentary, and then they're going to kind of introduce themselves as well. Go ahead, Jay. Go ahead, Jay. Unmute yourself and talk.
Well, definitely. All right, so we're going to start at the top. And William Stubbs. Ironically, I met the day that I filmed Girl Dads. He came from a referral, and he definitely knocked it out of the park. He has, well, I'll let him talk about his girls, but I know he has three beautiful girls and a wife. So he was amazing. And then we'll go to Courtney Mcclain. He's a brother who I've known since college from the University of Oklahoma. He's been doing this thing for a while. When I first started creating Girl Dads, he was the very first guy that I had in mind. And then we have Ronald Jordan, another guy who I've known for, about, 20 years or so. A dope individual, has his own girl, and also married into a family with girls. So I thought his story was unique. I wanted to include him. And last but not least, we have Jerry Bulls. Jerry Bulls is a brother who I also met the day of shooting the documentary. And I had no idea how dynamic his story was until I got in front of the camera.
Oh, wow. Well, good. Well, while you mention their name, I'm going to go around and have each one of them kind of mention their name and talk about where they're from and how many daughters you have. Let's start with you, Jerry.
Right. Greetings, gentlemen. Pleasure to be on with you guys. To all the dads, happy Father's Day. I am a native of the Chicagoland area, and I moved to Oklahoma a little bit over a decade ago. At the time of the film, I had one daughter, and my wife was pregnant. So now I have two daughters. Second daughter is almost 6 months old now, and their names are Shaylin and Shania.
Okay, Ronald.
Hello, happy Father's Day to all the fellas out there. Good to see you brothers on here. I am the father of three daughters. I have who's now 22-year-old Jasmine, 18-year-old recent high school graduate Genesis, and I have a 10-year-old daughter Savannah.
Wow, awesome. Mr. McClain.
Yes, you hear me? All right. Greetings, brothers, kings. My name is Courtney Mcclain. Born and raised Oklahoma City. I have two daughters. My oldest is 4. She's Kamora McClain. The youngest is 3, and that's Camila McClain. And they wear me out every single day.
Okay, Mr. Stubbs.
All right, William Stubbs. I am in Dallas, Texas. During the shooting of the documentary, I was in Oklahoma City, working as a district leader there. I have 3 beautiful daughters, 10, 6, and 4. Cade, we dropped the N off of Caden and made Cade, and then there's Casey. And by chance, I'm Tommy Williams' former principal, so it's good to connect.
So basically, he said he taught me well. Yeah, when I worked for Rise Academy, not a Rise Academy. I'm sorry. What was the name of Kennedy Charter School? I was the technology teacher there, which you should be impressed because all of this technology for the film festival, of course, is how it happened. I'm able to get it done. My name, of course, my daughter's name is Tabitha, and Tabitha's over at the University of Cincinnati right now. And so great have you guys here. Also, hopefully your daughters are watching because we're going to be talking about them as well as you. And so as we begin, the filmmaker Jay Wiggins, real quickly, just talk about the purpose of how this idea come about that you wanted to create a film about girl dads.
Well, I'm currently working on a feature called Pops, and Pops just talks about the magic and the importance of Black fatherhood. So during that process, I was interviewing my personal pops, whose birthday was on Juneteenth. Happy 65th birthday, Pops. We talked about the differences between the way he raised me and the way he raised my sister. And the way he raised my sister was, he just basically just coddled her, kind of took care of her and loved her extra hard and really just protected her. With me, he was like, hey, you're a boy, go bump your head, pick yourself up, don't cry, be a man, you got this. And my sister absolutely hated that. She was like, yo, I should be able to go out and bump my head too. I should be able just to go out and just pick myself up too, and do that kind of thing. And so she never really understood what he was trying to do, how he was just trying to be just that level of protection and really take care of her. And so I wanted to document a film about the love that fathers have for their daughters and how it differs in a way with the way that they love the boys.
Yeah, it's interesting. I heard a saying that fathers discipline their sons and they favor their daughters. Mothers discipline their daughters and they favor their sons. Do you guys agree with that? Just not. So interesting. That's good. So let's talk about this. I mean, because this film I'm glad we screened it on Father's Day. And you guys talked about some very important elements in the film. We go around the room. What is your perception of how the world views Black fathers? What is your perception of how the world views Black fathers? And we're starting you. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go to take from JB, as unicorns. When you're doing something normal, the regular, then it's extraordinary. We have to shine a light on Black fathers taking their kids to school. We have to shine a light on Black fathers doing the basic things that a father should do. And I know me personally, I know I go above and beyond. I do the hair. Now you might get a raggedy ponytail out of me, but I do it. And, I make sure it's moisturized. And I'm real big on father-daughter time. I'm real big on bedtime stories and kissing them goodnight, telling them I love you, giving those words of affirmation just constantly, man. Because like I said in the film, if you don't, then when you're ready to give them over to the world, as they say, they may not have that self-esteem that they need to dwell in this world and be strong Black women like they need to be. So I'm just really intentional on giving those words of affirmation and showing those signs of affection.
Good. Mr. Jordan.
I would definitely say that Black fatherhood is undervalued and underappreciated. To piggyback on what Jerry said as far as the unicorn, even when you do what you should be doing, and it's far too many of what society pushes the narrative that is not enough of us that are actually being good dads, that are at home daily, that are handling business, that are doing, as Courtney said, that are brushing hair, that's cooking meals, is undervalued, is underappreciated, and it's something that narrative has to be pushed so that other future fathers can see that Black fathers do exist. Their place in society is here.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good point that's been made. I also want to emphasize that I think, and I said this a little bit in the documentary, I think that many fathers find fatherhood challenging because of what they've been exposed to or what they've experienced, whether that's been strong fatherhood or whether that's been absent fatherhood or whether that's been silent fatherhood. You think about many Black males having the experience of fathers who were incarcerated or fathers who worked multiple jobs or fathers when they came home, they were so tired that they really couldn't contribute anything outside of just being a protector and a provider. But one thing I also said in the documentary is I feel like our generation, or there is a generation who is willing and able and being equipped to counter the stereotypes against Black men. And a lot of that countering is just happening from that experience of not having a father. And I think from that, many have wanted to turn the tides. And so even though the stereotypes might be out there about our race, about Black males, many of us have locked arms to counter that stereotype. And that's the positive pieces that we can pass on to the experiences of our daughters. And so while it may be some reality, it does not have to be our future reality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Grateful first and foremost to share a panel with all of you guys, and shout out to Jay for pulling this idea together. I feel like in a lot of cases, our fathers have been shrouded down through the decades, through the hardships that they've gone through, and not necessarily given the light of exposure that we're getting to now. And I know for me, and I'm sure you guys could probably say the same, we stand on shoulders right now to be able to take what we've learned down through the years, down through the decades, and generations before us and change it. And I think Courtney taught to this as well as Ronald, that we have to adapt what we've learned and apply it to our situation and make it that much better. And we do them credit, we do them justice in doing that, because we didn't arrive here by ourselves. There's been a lot of people that have poured into us along the way, not just a father, but fathers. And so it becomes one of those things where, as we've gotten the platform to be able to do this, to share it and let people know that we've been here the whole time. You know, we haven't dodged anything. You know, unicorn, I feel like, is a word that I got from my daughter. She loves unicorns, but the idea is that we're not a myth, we're not a legend, and that we've held true through the fire, through the testing of time.
Yeah, and I believe Tommy's having some difficulties getting
Yeah,
in. So,
yeah.
are you
Yeah,
still
can you
there?
guys hear me? Can you hear me?
We can. We just can't see
Okay,
you.
yeah, I got to fix that real quick. Let's talk about, because it's not important that they see me right now, but I'll fix that. Let's talk about mistakes, because we know that our goal is to be, this great father. We have some things, but no one's perfect, and we've made mistakes. So if you look back over fatherhood, what would you do again at the opportunity? Meaning, talking about a mistake that you made as a father, and if you had to do it over again, and maybe it was a learning process, you just didn't know better, or you was caught up into the workforce. I mean, many pressures that we have. What is one of those things that you would do over?
I'll take this one first. Don't assume anything with your children. Let them teach you. Don't jump to hasty conclusions, because a lot of times, I know for me as a dad, I can't speak for everybody, that I might put some of my experiences on her, and that's not necessarily fair. And so I have to allow her to be, take this in context, teacher at times, so that I know exactly what she needs in the moment, and humble myself, to be able to do that. And I think it ties into being patient with my children, because now that I have two of them, and they're both young, they both have different needs, and so I can't just take a litmus test or a cookie cutter approach to what they need in life, the way their lives are going to be shaped, and ultimately what they'll become. But I have to be patient and not assume. Totally.
And you had to ask this question. My wife is in the room, so I'm real nervous in responding. But I will say that instead of mistake, I think one thing that I'm trying to grow in doing is not only being more communicative, because I think as a male, we communicate in our own maleness that sometimes is not translated out well. But I think also all of us are career dads as well as we are girl dads. And I think for a period of time, I have chased my career relentlessly, and I think that has come at a cost of me not being always present, or sometimes, and I really want to look over and see if my wife is looking at you right now. But sometimes being present, and you work, you travel, you work so that provisions are made. And then when you are accessible, you're tired, or you're short in speech, or patience is limited. And so I'm trying to be more communicative, and while making sure that provisions are made, make sure that I am also accessible and around to celebrate small things, whether it be a tooth missing or report card grades. And so I'm trying to make sure that I am communicating out in a way that that helps to further validate, and then also being more present. Another thing that to another question that I thought was worthy of going back to is, I think another intention of both us as husband and wife is to make sure that our daughters have access to positive female and positive male role models. And that begins at home. And so being an educator, oftentimes, you know, you interact with students who have, and there's nothing wrong with having aspirations to be those who are in spotlight, or those who are famed, and those who have albums, and those who sell records. There's nothing wrong with that. But the role models have to begin in the home, and trying to make sure that we start there, and then shine light on family members, heroes and heroines, so that they don't have to look to social media or popular culture to be validated. And that begins at home.
Yeah, yeah. What about you, Jay? Unmute yourself.
The irony of me creating my first film about fatherhood and currently working on my second film about fatherhood is I am not a father.
Oh, oh wow. Wow.
That's interesting. I just feel like Black fatherhood is so important. I know the relationship that I have with my pops is so important, and it's a relationship that I didn't value until I got grown. It wasn't until I was in college and paying my own bills where I was like, yo, why are you so hard on me? Why were you tripping? And he asked me a couple of questions. I'll never forget it. We were sitting in the living room. We like to sit in the living room and court. That was our thing. So he's eating some chicken, and I said, "Man, why were you tripping growing up? Like, what the hell was your problem?" And he says, "Well, tell me about that one time you went to jail and how I helped you." I said, "Well, you know, I never been to jail, but tell me, like, you know, what was your problem?" And so he was like, "What about that one time you got in trouble? You know, remember how I bailed you out?" I said, "Well, I've never been in trouble." He said, "Well, aren't you in college?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he just looks at me, and then he starts eating his chicken like nothing even happened. And, oh, I get it. So he was just like, I was there. I was hard for a reason. You turned out great. You're welcome, basically.
And I'm going to go right now. I'm going to unmute yourself real quick. I hear some feedback with someone. I don't know where it's coming from. So let's talk about this, the mental health aspect of fatherhood. I remember as a young father, I was married, had a divorce. I went to work one day. In 24 hours, my life changed over a lie. The trauma as a young father had me abandon fatherhood at that time. I'll never forget. I would have killed someone. I never forget that time I would have killed someone because of the trauma, right? For those who I thought inflicted the trauma was part of it, which were my in-laws. And so being a man and seeking mental health, and for me, this was back, late 80s, where we really didn't seek mental health counseling. Talk about any mental health challenges. We've been very open and forefront with men who are watching. That trauma for me is still affecting me today in the relationships with me and my sons. So talk about any trauma that has happened with you, or situations that if you sought counseling, it probably would help you be not just a better father, but a better man.
I can speak to that one. So being that my father was not in my life, and one of my pieces I talk about how I couldn't call him on his birthday, though I remember it every year, April 6th. I talk about how he had his near-death surgeries, and I couldn't call him either. That resentment, 12 years a slave, and I still have this animosity. But honestly, if I could just see you, I want to tell you, I've always wanted to be just like you. And that resentment, holding on to things that I couldn't necessarily change, I had to switch my mind off with my kids, and let them know to be a forgiving person, not to be naive, but to be a forgiving person. And if you don't forgive that person for them, do it for you. And I think a lot of times in Black families, I know personally to tell my business, my family is composed of a lot of people that just hold on to grudges. Um, one of my uncles passed when I was in college, and one of my other uncles hadn't talked to him in years. And I just couldn't imagine having a sibling that I grew up with and not speaking to. And I say this as an only child, but that resentment that I have experienced with Black people just holding on. And I think that ties well with mental health, the ability to have that emotional intelligence, to know how to forgive for you and for that person, and to salvage that relationship. Because as we've been seeing with Corona and just everything going on in the world, we're not promised to make it home. So we have to be very intentional with loving our kids, our children, our spouses, each other as brothers, and be able to forgive. That's what I've learned.
I would definitely say that, it's funny that we're talking about this film today on Father's Day. This has always been a bittersweet holiday for me. I grew up without my father being present in my life. And, part of why I am the way that I am as a father, and my children have heard it forever, is that I am the father that I am today because of who my father was not to me. And I know that there's been an evolution of fatherhood going from an 18-year-old parent to now a 40-year-old father with years of experience. Uh, Going back to the question that you said earlier, as far as a mistake or a problem that you've had, was simply validating emotions. The only emotion I dealt with for years was anger. That was the only emotion that I would validate in my household as it related to my children. To my girls. If they were angry, then I would listen. But if you're crying, if you're sad, if you're emotional or this, that, or the other, it's like, go talk to your mama. Because I wouldn't validate anything other than anger. That's something that I've had to grow. That's something I've had to adjust and see that because I was hanging on to so much anger, frustration, and animosity towards my father, I was not opening up myself to my children, which means they were missing out on a key component. Yes, I was there. I was present. I'm at the games. I'm at the practices, but I was not emotionally available to my children. And that's something that I feel that I have grown, especially over the last 10 to 12 years, with exposing myself to them.
Wow.
I'll go next. So when you talk about things of that nature, one of the things that really shaped me as a person, because I think all these kind of trickle into what we become as dads and fathers. Coming out of high school and going into my early college years, I dealt with depression, dealt with anxiety, dealt with a sense of not knowing who I was. And I was fortunate on a few levels. One, I found Christ down the stretch in those years of my life, and it started to solidify my identity in regards to that. And he began to show me things about who I am, what I was to become. But in a human sense, I also had individuals at my college and as well as folks that I knew in the area that knew me well enough to understand, hey, something was going on. And I think the first thing that we have to do, particularly as dads, is to admit to ourselves and to other people, the right people, let me say that, because that's really important, that something's wrong. Like if you're not right, and you don't have to have the ironclad mentality that you have to just will through it and just burrow through it. If you need a breather, if you need to say, hey, I need some help right through here, there's nothing wrong with saying that. And what we would find out is that there's probably a lot of men around the way that have a similar story to what we've experienced that can help us either navigate it or going through us with it at the same time, that we can lock arms with and say, hey, let's try to figure this out and get through this together. But I think in our silence, we suffer. And I think if we're not careful, that can permeate what kind of father we become, whether it be for the positive or for the negative. And I figure, if we're going to go through a scenario or a situation where we have to deal with that, let's not come out empty handed.
Right.
Let's come through with experiences that can be utilized to help our children, help our wives, help our family, because ultimately we're leaders in the household, we're leaders in our communities. And that's kind of the mindset that I adapted coming out of depression and anxiety. That has ultimately helped me to be a better father to my children, because I know there are going to be things that that my children may not be able to articulate to me that they're going through, but I have to be sensitive enough and know them well enough to say, hey, look, something's going on. And if I'm not the voice that you're listening to, go out and find the voice that they can listen to. Because maybe it's not housed within my person to be able to assist you, but that doesn't stop me from being a resource. Doesn't stop me from being a conduit to help you get from where you are to where you need to be.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you ask a very deep question, and I think within the Black community, conversations about mental health, we don't have them much. Conversations about seeing a doctor or a therapist or a counselor, some of us don't have those conversations much. But based upon your question, some things that came to mind instantly was knowing your family's medical history, number one, is important. And if you have cases of mental health illness in your family, being able to know what that looks like, why that was caused. Sometimes it's related to stress. Sometimes it's just related to diet. Sometimes it's just related to lifestyle. Sometimes it's just genetic. But I think that's important to know that. And the other thing I thought about too is what really anchors us. And so I think along, from my experience, just been surrounded by strong-willed, raising a single-parent household. Mother was very strong-willed and determined. And while there were bumps and obstacles, she was still able to persevere. And so that was good to see that modeled. But I also think about what anchors us. And I think about, Jerry's response to our faith being things that anchor us. Some of us don't have an anchor. And so we rely on substance abuse or other things to really address the things that we're going through. And that further propels the mental health issues. And so I think if we're conscious, number one, of knowing our family medical history, conscious number two of knowing stress and how we're dealing with it, conscious number three of knowing our lifestyles and living healthy lifestyles, and then, finding something or knowing something that really anchors you as a person. I think that those are things that, in addition to seeking out professional support when needed, I think those are things that just come to my mind instantly around how do you really address mental health.
Yeah, it's interesting. And so when we look at that, and I have a few notes I want to talk to you guys about, because it's interesting. Someone mentioned about COVID-19. We're in the midst of, and we see the Black Lives Matter movement. We see some of the injustices happening right before our face to Black men over and over again. And so when we talk about mental health, that's one of the big reasons why we speak to that, because many of us are living in our silos. We've been taught to take a licking and keep on ticking, but we're dying in on the inside. And so I think you guys were articulate and sharing about getting help, talking to someone. Let's talk about, before we go to my next question, mentorship. What I mean by that is, like Jay, you have a good group of brothers. You invite them to your house. So let's talk about iron sharpening iron among our peers, and how important is it to have that positive role model in our peers? And also, do you check your peer when you see they're a little foul, they're doing some things that's not right? So number one, how important is it to have that peer group? And also, do you hold your peer accountable?
Yeah, a very important and valid question. So I'm a poet, and I was writing a poem about a month ago, and the line, it says, iron sharpens iron. So if you're offended by anything that I'm saying to you, then maybe you aren't iron. Maybe you're a paper plate. And so I hold all my friends accountable to, for everything. I think it's very important. I've literally lost friendships because I held them standard that they didn't want to be held to. They say birds of a feather flock together. You know what I'm saying? So if my friends out there being reckless, especially in regards to, marriage and fatherhood, then what are people going to think about me?
Yeah.
I've always thought that was important, to have that checks and balances with your friends and be like, hey, we're not always going to make the best decisions.
Right.
We're going to make some mistakes, but you have to be willing to want to be, a better person through all that. So that's where the iron sharpens iron comes in. You know what I'm saying? Because we're all going to fall short, but just help each other.
Yeah.
that mentorship is important. And I'm very sure a lot of guys in this film, you know, they talk candidly between themselves and talk about fatherhood, like, you know, because there's different levels of this fatherhood. You know, you got you know, 3 of the guys in the film, they all have kids under the age of 10. And then you have, you know, Mr. Jordan, who, you know, he has growner kids. So I'm very sure a lot of them can look to him to see, okay, well, how do I deal with this 10-year-old, you know, in the future? You know, how do I deal with this teenager that's wilding out? You know what I'm saying? I think that's important. And your second question, what was that again?
You answered in the beginning, holding each other accountable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you answered that at the beginning. Yeah. And the mentorship among peers, I guess, where we're you know, that's what the mentorship among our peers, you know, how that's what I call it. You might have someone your same age, but somewhat more immature in certain areas. And so that's why actually how important is that? And then having someone who also share with you, but really the accountability piece where you're able to check your friend whether they like it or not. Good. Somebody else talk about that.
Enough to handle it. Like I said, iron sharpens iron. So what I say, maybe you aren't iron, and that's okay. Let's get you there.
And if you could talk about a situation, if that ever occurred, talk about a given situation too, which I think takes it, you know, a little deeper. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, go ahead.
Not to put too much of the story out there, but I had a situation where, you know, me and my homie, you know, were really close. And, you know, the decisions that he was making could 100% jeopardize his whole family, you know, and he has kids. And I'm like, the things that you're doing is going to ruin your whole household, you know, and you know, I'm talking to him and I'm saying, hey, you grew up in a single parent household. You know what it's like. Like, why would you consistently make a set of decisions that's going to possibly cause you to be the guy on the outside, the weekend daddy, the every other weekend daddy, the reservist daddy? Like, why would you do that? And so after a while, you know, we fell out over that because I'm very vocal on my Facebook and talking about things like that. Like, hey, you know, when you're single, hey, there's very few rules. You go out there and run them. But if you're married, you got to cut that out. And because it's deeper than just that marriage, it's about the kids also that you have in this world, and you don't want to jeopardize that. So yeah, I was very vocal in saying that doesn't align with what I believe in. And,
right. How did he respond to you?
Oh, we're not friends anymore. Because that decision was more important than it was more important than his family and our friendship. And my thing was, if you are easily willing to hurt your family, I know I'm nothing. I'm not as close to you as your seeds are. So if you're going to risk losing them, then losing me is nothing.
All you would be is an alibi.
That's it.
I was with Jay.
Yeah. And, I mean, there was a period of time when that was happening. Like, hey, I don't want to be your alibi. I don't want to get the phone call. Where's my husband? No, I don't know. I'm going to be honest.
Right. Ronald, share with us your thoughts about that.
You know, part of that is there's a huge misunderstanding between peers, associates, and friends. And when you're used to dealing with peers and associates, it's real easy to shut them off. It's like, you're simply on the outside looking in, and peers and associates really don't care about your entire situation. If you want to go and be foul and do foul stuff, then we can all be foul together. But friends are somebody that are going to hold you accountable, and it's also somebody that you have an ear, you know, to listen to. If I see, you know, somebody that's doing something foul, if I consider them a friend, they consider me a friend. They're going to listen to me. I'm going to be able to grab their ear and say, "Bro, you're tripping."
Yeah.
You know, these are things that you should not be doing. And when you have a relationship with somebody, you have a friendship, you're willing to listen to what they're talking about because you know that you can always pull them back or pull the reins back. And if at any point that they're willing to turn their back to walk away from you, they're not listening to you, they're not your friend to begin with. You know, and this is something I say to clients, it's something I say to my own children on a regular basis. Be cognizant, be conscious of who you're listening to and who you're speaking to.
Interesting. So let's go to this. I think we talked about the corporate. Mr. Stubbs, you talked about the corporate response or the pressure of trying to excel in your job and your profession, and some of the decisions you make because you think that will help you propel forward. Sometimes it places a sacrifice on the family. And I talk about my situation in '09 when I decided to move to Charlotte. I knew exactly that Dayton, Ohio had the walls were closing in on me. I couldn't breathe. I was suffocating in the city. And I just really felt, led to come to Charlotte, North Carolina. At that time, my daughter and I, we Wednesdays was our date night. So we always went because on our way to church, we passed all these restaurants. So we would go early to eat at the restaurant, then go to the Wednesday night Bible study where she go with the youth group. I'm there. Then we come home. It was about a 45-minute drive as well. So it was good time. We're talking in the car. So when I made the move, that's something that was established. And I knew this move to Charlotte. I just felt in my spirit, 10 years later, this exists because of the move. But yet there was a sacrifice. And I remember having that conversation with my daughter about it to see how she felt. And this is, I'm getting a little sad because she released me. She was mature enough, and I believe she was 13 at the time. She's on Tabitha, if you're here, she's 13 or 14. And we had that conversation, and she kind of released me to come. And that was my only daughter. And when we had a talk since that time, she's never judged me for that. So that's a blessing for me. But talk about a professional decision that you guys had to make that would have an impact on your daughters or your wife, and they would have to kind of sacrifice for it.
I'll take a stab at it if you got it, Will.
Well, I was going to think, just from my experience of, in my professional experience has caused me to relocate. And this has been without intention. I was comfortably set in Durham, North Carolina, was recruited for a role in Charlotte. So we had to pick up and move there, and then comfortably set in Charlotte, was recruited for a role in Oklahoma City, moved there. And so with this moving, I've been blessed because my wife has, placed her career on hold to help with the family and development of our children. So I've been blessed, and not everyone has that, and not everybody wants that, but that's just been something that's worked for us. But I think with me chasing my career, it's caused my family to have to give up something in order to follow me. And so I don't want to be selfish in doing that. And there's always conversations of, with my wife, what's your thought on this before we make this move? But I think, as a career dad, there are these two games we have to play. One, I think, is a game of balance. And I think the other game is around what the trade-offs are. And so just knowing what they are and how to do them and using prudence when it comes to the decisions that you make, knowing that there could be a negative impact, that just causes you to really focus in on the choices that you make.
Yeah. And my daughter is here. She just said, I'm here. Tabitha's here. And Tabitha, if you could just type real quick, what age were you? 13 or 14 when I moved to Charlotte? I said 13 or 14. I know it's one of those, but we just had a great time talking. And the other nice thing about good. I want you. Let's keep with that. Continue on that conversation in terms of that.
I'll run with it for a second.
Good. Okay.
So I'm gonna spin the perspective just a little bit, and you'll see in the story. So I think it was 2017, right before my daughter was born, or right after she was born. My job went through reorganization. Everybody loves that word, and we all know what that means. So they handed me the pink slip for Christmas. And my daughter was 6 months old at the time. We had just moved to a new house. And there was a lot of moving pieces at that time. I say all that to say is that it motivated me not to have just one source of supply or income or way that I can take care of my family. Because as a dad, I have to be a provider regardless of if the job is there or not. And so with that being said, I found other avenues by which I can support my family and not just let there be one sole source that provides for my family or that I utilize to provide for my family. And with that, My wife started a business, I started a business, and we work hand in hand together to champion those businesses. And I think, you know, it's very important. We talk about leaving a legacy for our children's children, and building something that's going to outlive us. These have to be the things that we have conversations about at the dinner table and in the car. You know, it's great to have an education. It's great to have a job. But what over and above that are you going to do to be able to leave your mark, take care of your family, provide something that is going to outlive you? Because it's not a if, it's a when. I'm one of those guys. This is the 5th Father's Day that I have had without my father.
Right.
My father was an entrepreneur. His father was an entrepreneur. And so we
So,
have to take
let me ask you a question. I don't want to cut you off, but because I have a question that would that would lead you to what you're saying now. So, but what I want you to share with us is, what sacrifices have you made that is called a level of hardship on your family?
It's like what Will said. The job focus is huge, because if you're not careful, it will occupy a lot of your time. And you have to be very specific on the work-life balance. That's what I've coined the phrase. And many have utilized that down the stretch. Because let's call it what it is. In today's world, technology has made work so convenient, for lack of better words. The phone is always with you. The laptop, the iPad is always with you. And if you're not careful, you will miss those pivotal moments with your children, particularly your daughters, that you might not be able to get back. And that creates a level of resentment in the days to come, and maybe even in the immediate moment. So it becomes really important that for Jerry, that I am mindful Monday through Sunday, and really maintain that balance of, is this the most important thing in the moment right now? And sometimes I have to take that step-by-step approach and evaluate it, and embrace my daughter when I need to give her a hug, or have that daddy-daughter moment to talk to her and say and affirm her for those things. And that's where, you know, it's been the heavy lift for me.
Anybody else want to comment on that? Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm a poet, so I just give you a few bars. Speaking to poetry, so I torture my notepad daily with all this pain, pushing shredded mountains of dopeness through these veins. My mind's demons screaming all over the page. I'm high right now. And I'm complimented on being a great father, but I ain't shit while this addiction making me hurry my daughters to sleep just so I can write about their dreams. See, I was so focused on like my different passions, right? So when I go to community outreach, when I go to juvenile centers, when I go to different things in the community where I'm trying to pour into specifically young Black men, it was an outlet for me. So I'm like, I'll leave the wife and the kids at home while I go do this community outreach work. But what I start tapping into is, like JB said, showing them your legacy, creating a legacy. So I start taking my girls to these different community outreach opportunities. I start bringing my girls with me to different poetry performances, because I want them to see what their father is doing. And I've talked to some grown men who say they have very, very successful fathers, but their father had never shared their passion with them. And I never want to be this mysterious figure to my kids. I want them to understand what drives me, understand what my passions are, and I wanted to share it with them. So I put my daughters and my wife in my poetry videos. I bring them to community outreach activities that I'm doing. I want them to see what I'm trying to build, and I want them to see the person that I am. Because you know, growing up, I did have some male figures in my life here and there, but they were so busy with the world, being a Black man in the world, they didn't give me the gems. They didn't give me the game. You know, they were just too busy trying to make a living to provide for their family and themselves, and to deal with the world as a Black man.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm trying to be very mindful of that when I'm out here being a Black man in America. I want them to know everything that's going on with me and what drives me, because in essence, it's them anyway. They are my passion, and everything I do is for them. But as a man, you have to have your own stuff going on too.
Yeah. Anybody else? Let's talk about this. There's another thing I want to talk about. It's very important. I just got off a panel with women of faith, talking about their trauma, sexual abuse, uh, rape, molestation. It was just it was really interesting. Just got off the panel. I wasn't on the panel, but we had someone moderating, but I was listening to that. And so let's talk about the father's touch. I remember a lady saying to me one time, she said that her name is Odessa. She said, Tommy, you need to make sure that somehow that your daughter, you can touch a rubber arm, do something where she knows what an innocent touch feels like. And so I know me and my daughter, she came to Charlotte one time, and we was going to Discovery Place, Tabitha. I don't know if you remember this. I would wrap my arm through her arm, and we would try to walk the street, walk with her legs next to mine. We never can get it done, but we were trying to walk, but just as a form to touch. Sometimes she would plop her feet on my legs, or she's laying across the couch, her feet would be there, and I would, just be there, just to have that touch from a father, whereby she knows this is the way. If I'm touched, it's one of loving. You know what I mean? It's a loving touch that's pure. Talk about what you guys do. Is there anything you guys do with your daughter so she knows your presence and know the loving touch of a father?
It's funny you say that as far as walking into Discovery Zone. Something that I've done with all of my children, especially my girls, is that we have all developed a handshake, different pattern handshake. And it's just so that we are consistently in contact, just like you said, so that they understand the difference between an innocent touch. Walking through the house, you see them, they're getting something to eat, and you come up, you give them a little shoulder nudge. They may push back, they start feeling stronger, they start feeling better about themselves. So it's maintaining physical contact just so that they understand, this is okay, this is right, this is nice, as opposed to, something that you feel threatened by or that you're uncomfortable by. And in having that ability to have that handshake or that special DAP pattern, they'll be able to feel comfortable coming to you and saying, hey, this happened today. I was in a situation and somebody bumped me or they touched me in what was an inappropriate way. Right. But being able to physically connect to your daughters is vitally important to your relationship.
Yeah, I think I see touches. I think where you were going, Nichols, is around the father's interaction with his daughter in a way that allows her to really develop a sense of what privacy is and what interaction with males, that appropriateness, or interaction with anyone around appropriateness. My wife does a really good job of having girl conversations with and sometimes I have to leave the room because I'm like, this is too much, it's too much going on. But she has a really does a good job at that. But I really think around the touch, around not only the physical, the touch of, I approve of that, or I am proud of that. I also think around how sometimes the disciplined touch looks, it's making sure the shoulders are looking at me when I'm talking to you, and I think that's important too. And I think also touch goes beyond the physical to how we speak to them. And so for me, one thing I've been really my wife and I've been really trying to understand is, I'm pretty laid back, and I probably stay at a 3 or 4 in terms of temperature and tone. But if I get into a mode of asking questions that are leaning toward a confession, they're done. And so I don't really have to raise my voice to be quiet. And if I do raise my voice, it causes such a tremble that, I'm conscious of when I'm addressing, like, how's my tone? How's my temperature? How's my, and so I think that touch is equally important as all of the other validating touches. And one thing I like what Jordan was talking about. One thing that I oftentimes, my nickname for my daughters is Pretty, and I call each of them Pretty, and then I also want to validate. I do that intentionally because I do not want the first time that a male gives them a compliment that to be such a difference. I don't want that to be a foreign experience, that I want them to be validated about their beauty here, but then I also want them to understand that their beauty alone isn't enough. And so I try to validate them around their intelligence and their creativity. And so their conversations and their celebrations around the small things, like you read really well, or you're into math, so we have those conversations. So I think touching is beyond just like the physical. It's, how we are, because the touches have to be long lasting, and they also have to be ones that help them to develop into the young ladies and the women that we want them to be.
Right. Let's talk. I want every man to answer this question. What was one conversation you had with your daughter that when you left the conversation, you said, wow. And I'm sharing mine first. I'm a little older, so my daughter is older. I never forget we had this conversation. We were out eating, and she mentioned to me she had two boys liking her. She's in high school, two different boys. And so I remember let me stop. She was 13. We're at my dad's place in Dayton, Ohio, and she was with me. It was the morning of her 13th birthday. We breakfast, first time I saw her. Happy birthday. And we had the conversation. She said, oh, by the way, Dad, I have a crush on this boy. Now, we had breakfast. She hadn't even crossed over to 13 yet. And so I wanted to rise up in my spirit, but I said, until I could really make sense of what she just said. I said, so tell me about him. And she broke down the elements about this kid that I said, oh, wow. You know what I mean? It was, oh, wow. When she told me that, how smart he was, how he's this guy who's on the football, and this GPA that he has, his mom's a librarian. So she gives me all these great pointers that you would want to hear, right? And so I left from the table with a wow thing and was happy that she would have that conversation with me. Then we had another conversation where she had two boys liked her, and she gave me the description of each boy and why she didn't like them. And I said, it was so hard. I said, can't you give him a chance? So it was that hard. So, I felt bad for the guy. That is my daughter. So those are two wow moments for me. But give me a wow moment in a conversation you had with your daughter. Let's start with you, Jay. Yes, Jay. Yes.
That's ready.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you guys can hear me or not.
Yes.
So my conversations are a little bit different because I have a 3-year-old now.
Okay.
But she hit me with one day we were coming home from daycare, and she told me, Dad, you're awesome.
Oh, wow.
And I had to pause for a second because, my immediate response was like, wow, where did that come from? But then it dawned on me. I've been teaching my daughter, Shaylin, you're awesome. Shaylin, you're great. Shaylin, you're significant. You're valuable. You're important. And she's been internalizing that. You talk about one of those moments where you didn't know what you were saying actually has an impact in the child. And now it comes back and manifests in your presence.
Yeah.
Man, it almost took me to tears. You almost had to pull over in the car. Look.
Yeah, that's powerful.
It's moments like that make it so rewarding as a dad. And it only lasted for a couple seconds. But the fact that she said that, and she's going on to say things like, Dad, I love you to the moon. You're the best dad ever. Because we're putting into her, with the help of my wife, because I can't do it by myself. Let me make that clear. That these things are starting to take seed. They're starting to root. And now they're starting to show fruit. And it's one of the most rewarding things I could ever experience.
Wow. Ronald.
I will say, in you posing that question, I sat here and just started running through the million conversations that we've had with all of my girls, and just sat here, and I would say 3 instances that have happened. That's as far as my oldest daughter. I remember we were coming back from a track meet. She ran track starting at the age of 6. And I mean, it's 110 degrees outside. We've been out since 6 o'clock in the morning, and we're driving back from Missouri. And she just looked over. I mean, the music is going, air is pumping. We had Oklahoma City, and she simply said, I love you. And that stood out to me because every single night I said to all my kids, I love you, good night. Wake up in the morning, hey, I love you. For my middle daughter, similar situation. We were leaving a basketball tournament, and had been hooping all weekend. And this particular tournament, she wasn't doing as much as I thought she would. As a father coach, I was a little bit harder on her that particular weekend. Again, we're driving back. In the situation, she looks over and simply says, "I love you." And to have those feelings come from your child is not being provoked, is not something you love me, but it's on their head, it's in their heart to say to you. That left me feeling bad.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll speak on mine. Not too long ago, like maybe about right before the quarantine hit, probably about February or so. I'm sitting down with my youngest. She's only 3. But I swear she's been here before. But she's only 3, and we're talking about just something random. But she knows her mother's father pretty well. He lives in Duncan, but he comes up here often, and we go to Duncan. She had both of my girls have a good relationship with my father-in-law. So she's putting this together, and I never thought about this. She put this together. She looked up to me and she says, "Daddy, you don't have a daddy?" I said, well, wow, I do have a daddy. She said, "Well, I don't know him." She said, I said, "Well, he's alive. I have a father." She said, "Well, I need to meet him." And then,
Wow.
and then she looked at me like now, like right now. and that was a wow moment for me because I had never, besides my graduations here and there, my father has never been in my life. So I didn't think that, and my mother is such a strong figure, I never really felt like I missed anything.
Mm-hmm.
So now as a grown man with my own family, I undermine the need for for my children to know their grandfather.
Yeah.
I never thought about it. I never thought that they would ask. I never thought to make the time. And my father literally lives 20 minutes away from me.
Oh, wow.
And I've probably seen him maybe a handful of times in my life. And my big brothers, they always on my head about taking the girls out there and getting to know them. But it just has never been a priority for me. And my daughter, my 3-year-old daughter, brought it to the forefront. Like, I don't know him. I need to know him.
Wow.
And that was a wow for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that really was at 3. And I think there's somewhere in the Bible says that the babe shall lead them. You know what I mean? And they shall lead them. And probably into truth because of their innocence. You know what I mean? Which is good. How about you, Jay, on that same topic?
You talking about JD?
No, Jay. You. When I say Jay, I'm talking about you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't have any kids.
Oh, you don't have kids? Oh, okay. So we go, Mr. Stubbs.
Yeah, I was going to my mind and trying to think what can I actually share on Facebook Live and on this platform. But I think of a lot of the collaborative work, mostly led by my wife in their development and making sure that they have a voice and that they stand up for themselves. Once I was, and this is proof of what you put in comes out, right? And so one day I was reading, it was at bedtime, and we were reading a story before going to bed. And in the text or in the story, it seems like there was a character who was very antagonistic. And so my middle daughter stops me as I'm reading, and she says, I wouldn't take that. And I'm thinking, okay, where are we going with this? And so I sort of put the book down, and then I'm trying to let her and the character come together and get a feel for where she's going. And, she's just adamant about, that boy needs to stand up for himself in the story. And so I thought, okay, this is good. This is good. And then she went on to talk about what she would do. And I was like, no, we won't do that. We won't do that. So I think it's good to see that, what you put in them comes out, and they surprise you all the time, and so we have to be careful. We have to be the parents, this generation, because the generation that's now being addressed, or the one before this generation, but generations have seen adult leadership really misuse and abuse their authority.
Yeah.
And some have been violated. And so this generation has to have people in front of them who are saying more of do like I do and not do like I say.
Absolutely.
And so, that's one thing that stood out with me is her adamancy to help that character really develop a voice and speak up against bullying.
Yeah, good. We got about 5 minutes, and I want to get 2 quick points out. I want you guys to speak because as fathers, we have not been perfect. We made so many mistakes. We're still going to make some mistakes as fathers. Talk to the men who really has been kind of beaten down because of their lack of effort on being a father, or who children now won't receive them, that they have turned. They've turned from, let's say, their wicked ways, and they have a desire to start no matter what age it is. What would you say to the fathers who out there who are struggling in their relationship with their children? Mr. Tubbs.
I'll go first.
Yeah.
I'll go. I think one thing that I'm seeing oftentimes play out is the relationship between the father and the mother can sometimes be used to sabotage the relationship between the father and the children. So I think that's, if the adults are playing adult adolescent games, it's going to have implications on the children. And the adults just need to come together and realize that while we may not agree, while you may decide to go separate ways, while you might not have intended to even be a relationship, a long lasting relationship, you have a child together and you need to have that conversation and say, we need to put our stuff aside. Number one, grow up if we have to, because it's going to have a direct impact on the child. And that modeling is so key. And so I guess my advice would be is to be steadfast and continuous on your role, your support, your dedication and your devotion. Oftentimes it seems like the parenting practices have to change as the child gets older. And so be conscious of that, especially if you are parenting an adult child who, I didn't raise the child to do 1, 2, 3, but the child is enthused about doing 1, 2, 3. So it requires a different level of patience. But parenting, it does feel like it morphs into a set of practices that you just have to, employ. And more importantly, know that sometimes what's happening between that relationship is really to change you. And there could be some things in you that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
And so I would just be conscious of that, what you can influence and that which you can control and that which you can change. And then more importantly, that the mother and the father are on the same page, that we have the best interest for this child, and that we aren't going to play adolescent adult games in order to get back at each other or to sever that bond between child and parent.
Good. Mr. Bulls.
I come from a long line of men that have been persistent. They didn't win on the first try. And with that being said, they taught me an attitude and an approach that even if you mess up, my dad used to tell me all the time, son, if you mess something up, make sure it's a good enough job for somebody else to come behind you. And they really have to put in some work. And there's a persistence factor in that I think we really have to hold on to, because we may have missed opportunities. I've missed opportunities, and I've only been a dad for 3 years. But what I will say is that I believe that there is something inside of a father that needs to be downloaded into a child. Good qualities, good things. And I feel like if that download does not take place, we leave future generations at deficit. And as we can see down through the years, down through the decades, we just don't have room for deficit anymore. So whatever moment you may find yourself in, whatever day, whatever time, if it's a start now mentality, then start now. It's never too late to start right now. But the important thing is taking decisive action in the immediate to say, I'm going to own this. I'm going to get over it, or I'm going to help to get over it, or play my part to get over it. And then I'm going to be available so that if the opportunity comes to mend a fence, I'm there.
That's good.
I'm there.
That's good.
And that's really all you can do, because you can't dictate somebody else's response.
Right.
but what you can do is take ownership and action for your own.
Yeah, to be there. That's good. That's good. Mr. McClain.
So that's a good one. Mr. Stubbs took a lot of what I wanted to say. But being, especially if you're talking about coming into a child's life and you haven't been there, one thing that in my experience of mentorship, young kids are very particular with authenticity. So if you're not authentic, if you're not consistent, they pick up on BS really easy. So if you're a father coming in and you trying to get back at the baby mama, or your intentions are really not true, and you only make it a big deal about picking the kids up when you have to pay child support, those different toxic things they're picking up on. And even if you didn't have an original mindset in your heart to have a long-standing relationship with that mother, you got the kids though. So you have to show them, you have to be respectful to the mother, because especially if you have little girls and if you have sons, they're going to think that if you're toxic to the mother, that's how you're supposed to treat a woman. And if they're little girls, they're going to think, oh, well, daddy treats mommy like this. So in the future, it's going to be in the back of their mind that if they have a man treating them bad, it must be okay. Or maybe it's my fault, instead of the responsibility of the man to treat the woman with respect. But a lot of treating the mother with respect, being authentic and being genuine and consistent with the kids, and then putting the real energy in, not the I text my kids here and there stuff, or I just do some FaceTime a couple times a week. If you're the primary caregiver, you know what it's like to stay up all night with the kid. You know what it's like when the kids are sick and you have to miss sleep and then get up and go to work anyway. When you're outside the house, you don't really have a true grasp of that. So you can't appreciate everything that particular parent is going through. You have to step into it, because the FaceTime isn't enough. The little monthly check that you send isn't enough. The text messages damn sure ain't enough. The little calls aren't enough. You need to be present in your child's life. Get up off your ass and actually go be where your family is, because they're going to appreciate it. Because all this time, you're going to look up and you're going to miss a lot of time. And kids are smart. They'll recognize real early that they daddy ain't shit. Right. And it might be too late after that.
And how do you answer that when there's conflict? Let's say she's moved in. Now the baby, the mother is in another relationship that's now causing conflict with this man. I'm just saying, when there's different scenarios, share with how, and I think Mr. Bull said it right, how you stand fast, until that you're not, you do what you can until that door open up where you can do all you can. You know what I mean? Because sometimes the situations are not as easy for some men, and certain situations, and based upon their own mental health, they respond differently too. So I just want to add that. But what you're saying is absolutely correct. Mr. Jordan.
Man, it's bottom line about being consistent. It's about being consistent and being persistent. Even if you're not even if you're not in accordance with the ex-wife or the baby mama or whomever you have a child with, it's your job. It's your job to be that parent. It's your job to fulfill that role. So I say it to anybody. I don't care what your excuse is. You have to be there. You have to do exactly what you need to do for that child. And with life, it's about evolving. So too is fatherhood. So at any point that you say it's about time for me to get into my child's life, you're right. I mean, you should have been there from the beginning. For whatever reason, if that situation hasn't happened, start today. While you have breath in your body, you need to be in your child's life. Period, point blank. No questions asked, no excuses.
Good. Last question. This is the last one we're going to go, but I want you to speak to your daughters. I want you to say, I know it's Father's Day and it's our day. And Jay, we're going to get you on here because you're going to speak in advance to your children that's coming, right? So you're going to speak, you're going to bring them forward. So I want you guys to say something to your daughter. What would you say to your daughter? Just real quick, don't go into a big prayer, but what would you say to your daughter today? It's our day. And I'll go first. I'm going to speak to my daughter, Tabitha. Of course, I want to let you know how much I love you, how much I'm so proud of you. You are the mini me, and everything that you're doing. I wish we would talk more and more. I know I'm a little corny, but I wish you would call me more so we can talk more. I could talk to you every day. I said this to my daughter during the COVID-19. She's in Cincinnati, Ohio College. I'm here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I texted her, I said, I so wish you was here with us in Charlotte, because you and I would be doing all kind of TikTok videos. That's what I said. We would, because we would be making up TikTok videos, right? My wife ain't doing it, but my daughter and I would. And so she laughed at me. I'm like, you like TikTok videos? But anyway, so that's what I would say to her. Looking forward to come to Ohio to see you again, and I can't wait.
I'll jump in real quick. So although I never had kids, for the last 15, 20 years, I've only dated women with kids. And so it's been tragic to where when we break up, it seems like the women, they take their ball and go home. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have access to the kids. So what I would say now, and this is like, straight from the heart, to Reese Cup, to Layla, to Amaya, I want you to know, no matter what happened between your mother and I still love you, chocolate baby girl. You ladies are amazing. And hopefully one day when you guys get older, we can reconnect. Because, I was always that father figure. I was always that person standing in the gap when father was not there, or when he was not as present as he could have been. But, I'm still here whenever you need me.
Awesome. You guys can just jump in.
I'll go.
Go ahead real quick. Go ahead, Jake.
To Shaylin and Shania, always will love you guys, no matter what happens. Our song is "Ain't No Mountain High Enough, Ain't No Valley Low Enough," and we changed the lyrics to "Keep Mommy and Daddy from their girls," and that will forever be the truth. We love you guys, and I couldn't be more happy to be your dad. And it's because of you, too, that I can celebrate a Father's Day.
Awesome.
I'll jump in. Jasmine, Genesis, Savannah, I am blessed and humbled to be your father. You all have bettered me. You have allowed me to develop into the father that I am. I hope that I make you proud. I consistently work to show and prove what a man should be, and I hope that those things are being registered, that they're being accepted, that they're being received, and I look forward to the many more laughs and smiles that we have to share together.
Will?
Yes.
Yeah, let me go before Courtney because I know he's gonna spit some lines.
We're gonna go in.
He's gonna be real poetic, and I'm gonna be struggling afterwards. So I really want to say something along the lines of like, you got one more time to leave those Barbie dolls on the floor, but I know that wouldn't be appropriate. But I would say Caden, Casey, who seem to be coming in the room as I'm speaking now, you are God's gift to your mother and I. And we are excited to pump into your lives, to find out your interests, your talents, and to help you grow. We want you to be who God has called you to be. And it's our role to help facilitate that process as much as possible. So we love you and we have your back. All right, Courtney, go ahead.
Nah, we'll put me on the spot. Look,
No pressure.
Right. So what I would say to Miss Kamora, Miss Camila, your mother gave me 2 reasons to live. And before that, I was just a being walking this earth, and you actually gave me direction. So it was like being born again. I pray that you guys stay close to each other. I pray that you guys always be there for one another. And I pray that you lean on one another, because the world is going to be rough. Yeah. And even if me and your mother are gone, you will always rely on one to be there for each other in pain, and to be there as the first person when something is great going on in your life. To continuously be there for each other, be each other's best friends, and Daddy will always be here for you. And when I'm not, I'm going to be inside of you. I love you. Be great.
Awesome. Well, this is the conversation from the documentary Girls Dad, directed and written by Jay Wiggins. I just want to appreciate you guys being part of the 10th Annual Charlotte Black Film Festival and having this particular conversation, which is so very important, especially today on Father's Day. And for the fathers, wherever you are, be great where you are. Do better, but let greatness be your goal. Forgive yourself and do better. That's how I say. Forgive yourself and do better. That's what it is. That's the challenge. That's the challenge for all of us, brothers. God bless you, man. I appreciate you guys being here. Hopefully, I see you guys tomorrow night. I'm sorry, tonight, 7:00. We're giving away the best documentary film, best short films, best feature films. Girls Dad is up for best documentary. Okay, so you guys want to check that out tonight at 7 p.m. And so for everybody who participated in the chat on Facebook, we thank you as well. Hopefully, guys see you at 7 this evening. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Time, right?
7:00. You're going to get an email.
No, I'm saying it's Eastern time. We're on different time zones.
Eastern time. Everything Eastern time. Yes.
6 o'clock. Because everybody watching this from my feed is or.
Oh, wow. Right. Okay. Got you. Yeah. Eastern time.
6 Central. 6 Central.
6 Central. Wow. All right, brothers. You guys take care.
Thank y'all.